Go ahead.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the subcommittee meeting, Engineering and Infrastructure for this month. We are glad that you're all here. I have something to read. The members of the board may participate remotely by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic declared on March 16th, 2020, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. So thank you all for being here. We have two items for discussion today. The first one is the Cedar Lake Bridge replacement, Cedar Lake Road Bridge replacement. It's at 10%. It's Alexander Cato, Abdullah Abukar, and Mazarat Walana from Public Works presenting.
Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. I hope you're all doing well. Can everyone hear me clearly?
Sure can.
Yes.
Okay. On the call, in addition to the list that was read, I also have Jim and Mark from TKDA and Samantha as well. So they're our consultant team, and they've been supporting us with a lot of the engineering work and then some of the engagement materials as well. So I'll lead the presentation. I'm going to start sharing my screen. There's not a ton of content here, so I'll try to skim through it pretty quickly and then give space for the committee to ask questions and give comments. So I'm just going to hop into it. So this is our 10% concept. We presented to you all earlier this summer. I can't believe it's already fall now. And now we have a conceptual roadway design concept that we'd love to share with you all and get your feedback on. So just some of the background, the Cedar Lake Road Bridge that travels over the BNSF railroad tracks was built in 1941. It's nearing the end of its useful life. And we are proposing replacing that bridge as we do with all aging infrastructure in our city so that it's able to maintain and function properly. With this project, we are aiming to improve the bike ped access and safety, maintain vehicular access, and also coordinate with our agency partners, the Park Board, which has the loose line adjacent to this facility, and then the BNSF rail, which has active rail tracks that operate underneath the bridge. ADT is about 1,500 vehicles a day, so a low volume roadway. Bike and ped volumes are pretty high. I will caveat with an asterisk that the bike and ped data was actually taken from the intersection of Penn and Cedar Lake Road South, which is just a little bit to the east of that project area, just because there's no actual bike ped counts that have been conducted on the bridge. But it still gives you kind of a general layout of the volume. And I think for most folks that have biked, walked, or driven over there, we all know that it's a pretty popular connection point for multimodal access. There is no active transit routes that run across that bridge. So here's the project map. We have the red mark here that represents the bridge. We have the loose line trail here that provides a connection and travels over the bridge. It connects into Bryn Mawr Park and also into the Cedar Lake Regional Trail. So this bridge, and there's another bridge here that's not being reconstructed with this project, but these two bridges and this connection is a really critical multimodal connection into this area of the city. Going on to the next slide. Just a high-level map of the existing conditions. There's a bike lane on street, there's a sidewalk, and then there's a two-way roadway facility. This is a visual of it. It's a little hard to see, but you can see we have a pretty narrow sidewalk here with a railing. We have about a 5-foot bike lane that's on street, and then we have a 12-foot travel lane in each direction. Here's a visual from the side, and you can see the active rail line, the overhead transmission lines as well. I believe this is looking to the west. We have a view from the south end of the bridge with a bike facility with a sign, and this is just kind of just south. This is, kind of the southern limits of the project. Here's a high-level view of the proposed improvements. I wouldn't get too hung up on this. We're still not done designing the intersection, but this really just highlights that we're putting in bike facilities, we're putting in a sidewalk, we're putting in roadway facilities as well. And this kind of shows the northern terminus of the project, and then the southern terminus will be after the intersection. So we will be reconstructing the intersection as well, and then tying into the loose line trail to Bryn Mawr Park. This is the existing bridge cross section. So 6-foot bike lane, I think in the last slide, I said 5 feet, but I apologize. So a 6-foot bike lane, two 12-foot travel lanes, and then a bike lane and sidewalk. You can see here we have a total width of 50 feet, and our proposed treatment actually widens that bridge. So we went from 50 feet to 56 feet. With this proposed design, we have an at-deck grade bike and pedestrian facility. So you see the pedestrian facility here, which is 6 feet. You see a 7-foot bike lane, and then you see the roadway are all at the same grade level. And then we have a 7-inch raised curb that's 2 feet wide to separate the cyclists and the pedestrians from any motor vehicle traffic. The same on the other side of the bridge. The roadway is 24 feet wide. MSA standards require a 24-foot width. We do have flexibility with the actual travel lane, and we're recommending a 10-foot travel lane and then a 2-foot buffer for snow storage, and just to try to minimize the width of this roadway. With the addition of this, BNSF does require that any bridge over an active rail have a height of 10 feet. And this physical representation highlights that. We are working with BNSF around that design treatment. We have other active rail line bridges in the city with bridges at different heights and different designs, and I can talk through some of those. And we are exploring what that bridge will actually look like. And in our future engagement, which will happen later in the spring, late winter, we'll be hoping to share actual concepts, because the reality is we know that the bridge height is going to be a really active piece of conversation. And I think comparing it especially to this older version that was only about 5 feet tall and now we're going to 10 feet is obviously a little disconcerting to some folks. This bridge was built in 1941, so 80 years ago, and BNSF has changed a lot of their requirements and standards for their facilities around the city. So we're working within that, but also trying to have some flexibility to have a more aesthetic design. So the bridge is going from 50 feet to 56 feet, so we're widening it by 6 feet. We're enhancing bike ped facilities, separating them from motorists. Project schedule: we have our open house next Tuesday, and then we're expecting to. So we'll be sharing basically this concept at the open house next Tuesday, and then this is an update. This is actually going to be late winter, early spring. We're going to go back with our second virtual open house. We'll have a finalized concept, and also be providing opportunity for input on the treatment of the bridge railing and sharing options. And then this will be reconstructed in 2023. I'm opening it up to questions now from folks. Actually, one thing before I open it up for questions, does anyone from the design team, city, or consultant have any additional points to add before we open it up for questions? Okay. One thing I'll add, I know last time we came to the PAC, there was a question around benches and seating and the possibility of adding that onto the bridge. We weren't able to add that to the bridge because it widens the bridge. I don't know how to say it from a technical standpoint, but there wasn't really a good space to add in a bench or a seating area directly on the bridge. However, we have and are exploring the possibility of adding some benches around here connecting to the loose line trail. And so we're working with the park board. They're supportive of that. We'll be providing that input at our engagement process next week. But there is a possibility to put in some bench seating in this area over here as it connects to the loose line trail in conjunction with the park board. So that was one piece of feedback from the PAC that I wanted to add. It's not in the slide deck. I didn't want to change it after it was already submitted to the clerk's office. Any questions?
I have one quick question. Are you planning on putting any street lighting in on the bridge or on the roadway sections approaching the bridge?
Great question. So we are exploring that. I don't know if you all know Joel Lauren from Traffic and Parking Services, but we have been consulting with him around the placement of lighting. And we haven't finalized anything yet, but we think there are opportunities to provide some lighting. It would not actually be placed on the bridge. I can let Jim talk to some of the limitations from an engineering standpoint with that, but it is possible that we could put in some lighting just north of the bridge, particularly in this area. But like I said, we're still working with Joe Lauren from Traffic and Parking Services around that, but that is a possibility. Jim, do you want to just provide some perspective on why we can't put lighting directly on the bridge?
Certainly. Hi, this is Jim Belfiore. Good afternoon, Paul.
Hey, Jim.
We are, the bridge span itself is 62 feet, and our beam design is pretty much maxed out for a preliminary beam design. Adding additional lighting on the bridge itself is, we're fearful is going to fail the fascia beams. We also have the concerns of the BNSF railroad. They don't like lighting directly above their tracks. And we also have the limitations with the grade raise that's going to happen to get up to achieve the BNSF clearance underneath the bridge. It's going to be putting us closer to the overhead transmission lines. So we have to stay, outside of that swing envelope of those low conductors. But I do believe there's opportunity to put additional street lighting north of the bridge between Cedar Lake Road Bridge over beyond and the bridge over Bassett Creek. I'm trying to work out, what type of spacing the city would like for that lighting so that we can consider that in conjunction with these other constraints.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could get lighting in, at least, off the bridge. So thanks.
You're welcome.
What about lighting like on Hennepin Avenue Bridge? That's, there's lights that are lower than, they're probably at my waist level, so they're fairly low. They're really for pedestrians, I think.
Is that just shining on the walkway itself?
I believe so. I should know this for the amount of time I've been on there at night, but I'm distracted by the spiders. And the only reason I look at them is because spiders make their webs there. But yeah, I think it's just, that's the only possible purpose it has, is for lighting that up.
Something like that could potentially be explored. So long as it's not shining down on the railroad and it's not modifying the parapet rail away from the test level.
Julia, what bridge are you referring to again? I heard you say Hennepin.
Yep, the Hennepin Avenue.
The one that crosses the Mississippi River?
Yes, sorry, I didn't specify that. The big one across the Mississippi, not across a little part of the channel.
Yeah, we can check into that. And those, you said those are just pedestrian scale lights, right? They're not for illuminating the road.
I don't think so. I mean, they're definitely on the railing.
Mhm.
I think they're, yeah, I probably have pictures somewhere. I haven't been there in a little bit, so.
Meseret, do you have any perspective on that? We can definitely follow up with Joe Lauren on that too. But Meseret, I'm just curious if you had any perspective on the Hennepin Bridge lighting for pedestrians.
No, actually, we can explore those. On this Jim's point on the beam structure, we could explore those. We're just putting the same thing on a pilaster on the 10th Avenue Bridge right now, so we can look into that.
Noted.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Paul, your hand is still up. Do you have another question?
No, I don't. I'm good.
Oh, okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions for?
I've got kind of a broad question. If we are starting to get numbers yet for how we expect walk bike numbers to shift with mode share shifts accelerating, especially assuming that we will adjust our climate goals based on the latest IPCC report. Like, are you building it for high volumes, or what kind of volumes are you looking at, and what would that look like, especially given how close it is to the loose line?
So, Julie, just to make sure I understand your question, I'll go to the cross section. I guess your question is this treatment capable of accommodating a potentially higher volume of bike and peds?
Yeah, basically. And I guess I also am wondering if you're starting to use adjusted numbers in the way that in the past we've seen roads designed with a certain predicted vehicle use 2% growth per year or whatever? Are we starting to see that with the TAP integrated into things and adjusting for that? What would that look like to design this bridge with that really at the forefront?
So, I would say that the way we've approached this design is providing, access for bikes, peds, and vehicles, and knowing that the vehicle volume is low, and knowing that we need to meet a minimum roadway width of 24 feet. So we treated the roadway design in a way to have 10-foot travel lanes to minimize design speeds. We're giving 13 feet on each side of the roadway to bike and peds, and I think that can accommodate a pretty high volume. I would imagine that this design can accommodate significantly more volume than is even actually occurring on that bridge. So that's my general comments around the kind of modal volume predictions.
And you don't have numbers yet for that, or you're not getting instruction on kind of how to think about that or start shifting designs for mode share shift?
I would say that my approach to designs is around multimodal safety and access. I don't know how the street design guide defines volumes of bikes and peds in terms of the width and the spatial allocation. I don't know if it does it to that level of detail.
Maybe I'll just add, I think the answer is no, Julia. We don't have like numbers in the way that you're asking it. We obviously have our TAP goals and our complete streets priority and are trying to include that in the design, but we don't have specific numbers that I think influence this, if I understand that to be the question.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm wondering, I assume at some point we will, and at some point they will be going beyond where the TAP is, but that's a different conversation. I just was curious what was starting to come through with the IPCC and the TAP and everything. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the comment, Julia.
Are you wanting, I know we wrote a resolution and I know there are some other thoughts out there right now about this project. Are you wanting a resolution tonight or within a short period of time?
No, I think we would love to have a resolution when we come back with a 30% concept, which would be in the late winter, early spring. And that's where we'll have, our final 30% concept that will be followed by our virtual median and followed by a TPW layout. But so in the interim, we're not requesting a resolution, but are always open to feedback, comments, questions, concerns that you may have.
Well, go ahead, Julia.
I have one last question about looking at the difference in numbers. If we know what, it sounds like MSA adds cost to the building of the structure, and we know that building to hold vehicles does. Do you have any sense of what the financial difference would be or where the specific funding sources are for this bridge currently?
Yeah, so your question is, you're asking about funding sources, and then what's your other question?
So basically, if we removed vehicle lanes from this bridge, and if it were only walk, bike, and maybe EMS, then how would that affect? I know it would affect funding sources, but how would it affect costs?
So
and any other design considerations?
I can let Measure It, weigh in on the costs, but I think the alternative. So if we removed vehicles from this bridge, it's not just this bridge, it's this entire roadway network. And I think the costs for that are a lot more complex than just this one-off bridge. It's also not scoped anywhere in any of our documents around redesigning this corridor, not in the TAP, not in really any document. So there's really no planning guidance behind eliminating vehicles from this roadway network. I can let Measure It talk to the cost of reducing vehicle lanes, but I don't think I would say it's pretty negligible in terms of we're still building a bridge. There's still a lot of costs associated with it. And we don't have any visioning documents around redesigning this corridor without vehicles.
Are there other comments or questions for Alexander? I can share with you that I read recently the BACs proposal or their resolution. And I can't read the one that I have because I don't have it before me, but I can talk a little bit about it. And if we want to read it, somebody else could read it. I just, I can't read it because I don't have it handy. But I know that they talked about what the possibility was of maybe extending the deadline for this or changing the timeline and really doing a pilot project that examined what the impact would be of closing this bridge to vehicle traffic and having it open to just peds and bicycles and people that are rolling. And it sounded interesting to me. I know that that would be a very big change in your plans right now, but I think that as we keep looking ahead to the change in climate and the demand for us cutting carbon in the city, that making kind of radical changes and thinking outside of the box in terms of what we do with public space is important. And I agree, you're right. I don't think it's clarified definitively in the TAP, and I'm sure there isn't a policy, Alexander, right now that speaks to that. But and I'm just representing what I saw. I don't have the full thing here. I have it on my computer, but I don't have it readily accessible.
I have not seen the resolution, but I'm familiar with the stance. In my opinion, for something like that to be effective, I think there needs to be a more comprehensive plan around eliminating roadway networks in the city, and that doesn't currently exist. And it makes a situation like this very complex when we're so far along and now we're talking about eliminating vehicle traffic on a road, on a bridge that's 300 feet long, that doesn't really factor into account the other multiple miles of the roadway network and the other implications of that. And so that's kind of, I don't disagree with eliminating roadway networks fundamentally. I've lived in other places that have done a really good job of that, but it has to be a more comprehensive vision. And I don't think that currently exists.
Christopher, did you have a?
I just have one question. What would be the anticipated useful life of a new bridge?
I would say, and the engineers correct me if I'm wrong, it's 50 to 80 years.
Thank you.
This bridge was built about 80 years ago.
Can we correctly assume that a great deal of the wear comes from vehicle use? That if it were only pedestrian use, there might still be some and bikes. You still have some, but not to that same extent, or are there other things aging a bridge that rapidly?
Yeah, I'd defer to Meseret or Jim around around what those factors are.
Oh, hi, this is Meseret. Could you repeat the question, or Alexander, if you can?
Yeah, the question was, like, had this bridge not had vehicle traffic on it, would it degrade at the same timeline, or does vehicle traffic accelerate the degradation of a bridge's lifespan?
It's a tough question, but it is definitely when bridges are used more often by vehicular traffic, or any other traffic for sure that the life is not as long. But even bridge sitting for a long period of time too is with a minimum use with weather and other factors, bridge also deteriorate, but it's not as much, but there is a tendency to do so. Yeah, it would.
And this is Jim Belfiore again. Just to, bear in mind that if you did make this purely a trail and sidewalk type of bridge, you're still going to have snow plows and icing that's going to occur on that. So those factors are not going away. You're still going to have the heavy vehicles, and you're still going to have the icing and snow removal operations out there. So those are going to continue to degrade the bridge over its life. Thank you.
One thing I will say is I do really like, and I hope that continues, that you're putting in 10-foot, if it is in fact a motor vehicle bridge, that you reduce the lane width to 10 feet with 2 feet for snow removal and any other extended. I like the narrowing of those lanes. I think that's safer for all people. And I like that it's at a similar grade for the pedestrians. And I hope that the one thing I would say would be for visually impaired people is that there is some definition of texture for the pedestrian versus the bicycle, so that people that are visually impaired have a clearer sense of when they're moving into a bike lane if they're walking across that bridge.
Those are great comments.
To talk about the back resolution, it's reminding me of the discussion we had around the 3rd Avenue Bridge Central, and how there was a plan for, it kind of got shifted with COVID, but there was a really serious plan MnDOT had to get people out of cars and moving downtown in other ways because of the closures of a few bridges connecting those. But at the same time, there was no ability to build into the plan any information gleaned or any habit shifts that would come over the multi-year process of the 3rd Avenue Bridge. And I understand that where this is in its process, it may not be able to be part of a study, but it seems like we really need to start building in something different than what we've been doing in order to capture what happens with reduced demand when we shift roadways and what's going to happen as people shift mode share more and more.
So, what is the question, Julia? I know you referenced the 3rd Avenue Bridge, but I'm still not following what the actual question is.
I don't have a specific question. It was more just to comment on the BACs proposal, which I haven't seen, but as I understand it, which is basically that being able to study what happens if we can close these networks, and if we really see a huge volume of vehicles flowing to other streets. I don't know if we, that doesn't seem to be super clear, and it doesn't seem to be backed by a lot of what we know about human behavior. And certainly we didn't see the collapse of anything with the Fremont Avenue Bridge being closed. That one, it didn't cause huge traffic jams. People are able to adapt and make different choices. So can we study that and use this as a trial just for the study, if not for the kinds of conclusions we would reach?
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for the comment.
Any other questions or comments from PAC members or the design team? I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to share.
The only thing I'll add is just, the open house is next Tuesday. The project website will have a link to it, probably get added tomorrow. And, we'll be back later, probably near the end of winter with the updated concept. And we thank you for your feedback.
One last question. Alex, you mentioned that you've been in cities that have done the shifts in road network fairly successfully, and I'm just curious what those are, because I would love to look into it.
Yeah, I lived in The Hague in the Netherlands, And they have the largest car-free zone in the country. And they spent about 25 years kind of reconfiguring their downtown to restrict vehicle access. And so, you know, they've done a really good job of that. But like I said, they had a plan. Like I know the city of Minneapolis has plans and policies around reducing mode share and things like that. But, you know, having a plan around how do you reduce your roadway networks, I think is a critical step. And The Hague did that very well. Yeah, and they have the largest car-free urban center in the Netherlands.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your input. Thank you, PAC members, for your question. And I think we'll move on to our next presenter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Thank you all for your all the work you do to keep challenging us to make good designs. It's appreciated.
Thank you. Next is concrete rehab with Kristen Zimmerman from Minneapolis Public Works.
Hi, everyone. Just have a pretty brief introduction for concrete rehab to the group. So yeah, so I am leading our concrete rehab program PV 108 for next year for 2022. We have a couple segments of roadway that we'll be looking at to replace concrete panels within the roadway. And then within that, we'll be doing some ADA work at the corners just to bring those into today's compliance. Then we also look at just a little bit of opportunity to find out where do we have locations in which we can better improve the non-motorized realm, specifically at certain locations. Are there issues that we may be able to address, such as stormwater management or localized flooding? Is there some greening that we can do within this work that we could include within this program? So kind of the purpose and the justification of the program is just that, you know, we have older panels that are in need of repair or replacement. This is something that we'll be looking at when we go through this, that'll help shape these corridors for at least the next 20 years of the lifespan of the roadway. So be looking to make these improvements and any additional, you know, non-motorized improvements also. So for 2022, we just have a couple corridors. Let's see if I can zoom in here. So on the map, we're just looking at these lines in green. So there's one on Minnehaha. It goes from the intersection of Franklin down to about 24th Street, I believe it is. So just a shorter segment of concrete pavement that is there. And then we have another segment on 42nd Avenue from 42nd Street heading south down to 46th Street. And then also we have 44th Avenue, or I'm sorry, 44th Street that runs from Minnehaha Avenue essentially over to West River Parkway. So within those, we have 2 locations, and we'll continue to explore, you know, where we could have other opportunities. But from this, we have 2 locations that have kind of come out to us at this point that we're really looking at for more, you know, more intense, you know, improvements. This location here with Franklin and Minnehaha, currently it's a 2-lane roadway. However, we do have this semi slip lane here to the right that allows vehicles to come up and make their turn at Franklin. So this is an area that we'd be looking at when Franklin kind of had some improvements not too long ago, they were able to do a little bit of ADA work up here along the roadway. But this is something that we're looking at as a greater location for larger scale improvements, where we could do some greening, some stormwater management. There is quite a bit of opportunity for that, removal of some impervious pavements, and just an overall more enjoyable and safer pedestrian and bicycle realm for this area. You can see, just from the street view, that we do have quite a bit of concrete that's busted up pretty well. There's a lot of areas that, are patched up with asphalt. So when we see areas like this from our surveys, when those come through, these are those really good opportunities that we find that we could do something more extensive in these locations. So this is one of them. And then the other location that we're looking at for more extensive improvements right now is down here at 21st Avenue in Minnehaha. Again, you can kind of see from the satellite, there's a lot of asphalt that's holding together the roadway here. We have this kind of an odd geometry where, Minnehaha is on a little bit of this angle, and we have another street intersecting. So it makes for, currently a really wide opening. So we look for an opportunity to really redesign the geometry of this location and implement some more greening and stormwater management, upgrade all of our locations with ADA ramps, make sure that we're compliant. We have good, safe crossings, and just a more enjoyable pedestrian and bicycle realm. So those are our two locations that we're looking at as larger improvements, but throughout these corridors. So, and this one's pretty short. You can kind of see where the concrete starts here and just goes up to Minnehaha. So this is a shorter segment, but we'd be looking at all of the panels. We're working with a consultant to provide that work to let us know what panels will need to be replaced or repaired. And as we look at those, that'll let us know if we have opportunities throughout the corridor for just panel replacement, or whether it's something else where it's replaced with greening if it makes sense in that location, traffic calming or greening, those sorts of items, just as an opportunity. So this is one location, and then I'll kind of go to a satellite for our other locations just to give you a better sense. So 42nd Avenue here, between 46th Street, this whole block here. So we'd be looking at, these corners, bringing them up to ADA compliance, and all four. You can kind of see here at the intersection, this is pretty standard, where you can kind of see some panels coming up. So we'd be looking for those opportunities. If we have panels that are across from each other, that might be an opportunity to kind of narrow the street in certain areas, just to provide that additional traffic calming. Could maybe fit in some kind of greening within those, just to continue those opportunities. So that's 42nd, and that continues up to the school here. This is another location. It doesn't, from just our satellite views, doesn't look like we have too much going on at this location, but it is an intersection of interest to us, just because we do have the school here, we have the playground, we have just the park. There's a little bit of what appears to be some plantings, maybe a community garden. So this does kind of act as our entrance to this area. So this is another really important location to us to look at and see how can we help improve this location. So we'll be taking a hard look at this one and seeing what's possible at this location also. And then our last corridor is here, 44th. potentially maybe the corridor that may need the most work. We'll see once we get the survey back, but you can kind of just see from a high level, quite a few panels maybe are separating from each other. So there may be more extensive work here at 44th, but we'll work through that with our engineers and kind of figure out what the best solution is here on 44th. But again, more of the same ADA ramps and opportunities. So with that, that's just a really high overview of the program. Like I said, this is a 2022 project. So right now we're working through kind of our schedule and timeline, working through our consultants to figure out what our designs will be and where are locations for which we can find those opportunities and get those efficiencies through the construction realm for this project. Be doing extensive community engagement throughout this fall and into the winter just to get feedback and let people know about this project. And then we'll have this constructed out in next year sometime. With that, that's kind of all I have for you at this time. Just really early on in this project and in this process. So I'll be back, again to the PAC just to kind of talk through, especially once we start coming up with designs and locations for items that that are important to the PAC to come back with. So I'll have more for the PAC to see and review at that time.
So you're not asking for a resolution right now?
No, I don't think be looking for a resolution today. I think when I come back and we have something for the PAC to actually review as far as locations and designs and things of that nature, I think at that time would maybe be a more appropriate time for a resolution of support.
Okay. Are there any questions for Christian? Christopher?
Yeah, just one. I really like the slides that you provided to us, and in this there's different sections on partnerships and planning. It looks like it's a form that is filled out. Is that a kind of a form or a template that's usually filled out, or is this something that you've put together that's not done in every project? Because it's laid out a little bit differently than some, and section on public safety, a section on public health, and operating impacts and all that kind of thing.
Oh, sure. So I think you're referring to this page here. This is the OpenGov webpage. So this isn't. I think this is what you're referring to. And all the subparts. That talk about environmental justice and that kind of thing. Is that, I'm just blanking, is that a usual or a required components, these different analyses? So this isn't one of our project. So this isn't its formal project page that we list on the city's website. This is from our OpenGov website, in which and I'm not sure if Matthew or someone else on the call has more information on the OpenGov, how that exactly works. I don't have a ton of background on this website per se.
Yeah, I'll share.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think what we're looking at, does that come from Click, Christian, or?
Yeah, I think this is the application to Click.
Yeah, so and we can talk about that now and later as much as we want. But basically, I think what Christian is sharing is what we call a capital budget request, which outlines a standard, set of information for each project, and that CBR is how projects get into the capital improvement program, and that's what goes to CLIC, which is a capital long range improvement committee, which eventually ends up in the budget. So when we kind of go through the cycle every year of how the CIP comes to life and comes to be, what Christian is just showing you is that type of information.
Thank you.
So, does that
It's
help?
it's
Okay.
nice to have the comments on operating impacts and transportation. It gives a little background that sometimes I'm not perhaps aware of. So thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments for Christian regarding this?
I wasn't able to see what was being shown. I only had the link to what Christopher was referencing, but it sounds like some of the intersections are by MnDOT roads. At least that's my assumption. I don't know jurisdiction. And I know that they generally do not put in all legs of the crosswalks. So I would urge you to check that and make sure that all of them exist at all intersections. They often leave off at least one at every under or overpass. So if you can work to make sure that every pedestrian crossing is included, that would be great.
Yeah, duly noted. And just what I was showing was, it was just a Google map. And these are, so the streets that we would be doing the concrete rehab on are city streets. Minnehaha, kind of up at Franklin, you know, intersecting with the county roadway. So there might be some partnership there, but I don't think we'd be looking to get into Franklin itself. It would just be the work on the southern leg of the intersection. So solely on Minnehaha, but I appreciate the comments though.
Okay. I mean, I know that it seems to be that if it intersects with MnDOT in an overpass or an underpass, that's where we start losing legal crossings, and it doesn't seem to be about the control of the intersecting road. And we have a resolution that we've passed in the past around that aimed at MnDOT. It's not an actual policy of theirs, it's just a practice.
Sure, yep.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments for Christian? The only one I would have is, it sounds like you'll be doing handicapped accessible curbs. Would that be on every, if you're just at the corners when you're doing that, you're putting in concrete, I'm assuming you're putting in repair along the stretch of the road, not all of it is corners. But when you are at an intersection, you will be upgrading the intersections to be handicapped accessible, the curbing?
Correct. Yep. So
Okay.
when we're at the intersections, we will certainly be upgrading those corners.
Okay, great. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Christian. We appreciate the information. I liked looking forward to you showing the stuff that you're going to do in later years in North Minneapolis. One of those happened to be my old neighborhood, so I was really interested in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Christopher, did you want to do more talking about the issue that we were dealing with before?
Well, you know, I've thought about it a little bit, and why don't we chat, you know, Chris, we can chat, or Matthew and Chris, we can chat, just kind of get me oriented, and then, you know, perhaps we can put it on a subsequent agenda if there's something that should go beyond that. Basically, just I'm unclear on a lot of the instructions from the city clerk regarding the why, and if I better understand the why, I think I could be better participant or planner for the subcommittee. And I'm a little unclear regarding, you know, when we're going to have to identify specific individuals, going to count towards a quorum and this kind of thing, and maybe a better understanding of what the city clerk's expectations are. Because, you know, for example, in this discussion, Julia brought up, you know, ped height lighting on the Hennepin Avenue Bridge, and she says, I might have a photo of that. I don't know whether that photo could be displayed so she could say, this is what I'm talking about. Can we do that on this project? Or would that fall afoul of the expectations of the city clerk's office when it comes up organically in a conversation and discussion? So that's kind of the issues. Maybe you guys can think about it and we can coordinate down the road.
Well,
I appreciate it.
First of all, those are totally valid questions, and we've done a similar thing like somewhat recently with the BAC going over some of these, because I mean, I think I've over the course of the last year and a half or 2 years have probably said these various things, and it was even on some agendas, but they've changed and they're constantly changing, and it's a lot of stuff anyways. And so like whether it's a refresher or new content, like I'm absolutely happy to do that. We could do that now and either just end the meeting, and for anyone who wants to stay on to chat, we could do that, or if you want to set up a separate time later, we could do that, or whatever, however you want to handle it.
I think end the meeting, and maybe we could just take like 1 minute in the executive session, maybe just coordinate a time. Maybe we could just have a 10-minute phone call. You know, let's do it that way, I think.
I'm also curious, and not so much about the specifics of the rules, but the motivation behind them and whether that's consistent. I'm having some trouble understanding them and their application. So and it does seem like it's a P&P topic potentially.
So since it came up, like I might as well just do the real high level right now. So like the motivation for the city clerk's office is to make sure that all 50 boards and commissions are compliant with the open meeting law. The open meeting law is a state level law, and so they interpret it and they give their direction to Matthew, Millicent, and I as staff on how to carry out that direction. It's not really Matthew, Millicent, and my job to decide how to interpret that. It is our job to be the conduit with the clerk's office. And so we do that. They have regular like monthly meetings with us as staff and all other 50 boards and commission staff to roll these things out as things change. There was another state law passed 2 or 3 months ago that changed the online meeting, the way online meetings work. Basically, once the emergency order ends for Minneapolis, we won't be able to have online meetings the way that we do now, pretty much at all. And so they help interpret that state guidance, which is pretty dense and has a lot of legalese that Christopher, you'd probably be able to decipher better than I would. But the point just being like, it's not like a simple like handout flyer. So a lot of what we're doing is taking the clerk's office at face value. What they've explained to us, that the purpose behind it is, one, to make sure that we're not breaking laws or that we're like definitely within the bounds of the laws. 2, also just like the law is based in the idea of transparency and accessibility. And so they try to also not just interpret the law, but like we want to make sure that we're transparent and accessible as a city as well. So things like making sure the items are online 2 days in advance. Maybe the state law is that like if we had it up 6 hours in advance, we'd be good. But like the city is creating a standard across all 50 boards and commissions, including the city council, of what that would be. And so it's been a pain in a lot of ways to deal with all this stuff. And like Millicent's done a ton of work. We've done a lot of work in dealing with these, and they're frustrating. So like some of the things like the resolution writing, you know, like we interpret that to be that we can have it up on the screen to help us as we're saying anything out loud. That's pretty much like the one area where we allow ourselves to put something on the screen that hasn't been sent out before. Whether or not that you could poke holes in how we do things as a city, like through the law or not, that's just kind of how it is now. And in terms of like the clerk's office, obviously it'd be pretty hard for them, and maybe impossible for them, to go to all 50 boards and commissions. And so really, like, we hear your concerns. We do bring these concerns up, and like we've had concerns of our own. If there are more things that you want to reiterate, I think probably the best first step is to do that through Matthew, Millicent, and myself, and we can let you know kind of what happens from there. But I'm happy to take more comments now if people have comments on what you'd like to see change. Like, we honestly do pass these on to the clerk's office, and so do staff from other boards and commissions. And like, it might not matter next month, but like it might change things down the road. So happy to like take feedback on any of that.
I have one question. I have one question, Chris. If we had received a copy of the BAC resolution Monday or Tuesday, could we have sent it to you and said, can you add this to the agenda? But we can't do it if we get it a day ahead of time because it's too late. Is that the rule right now? It has to be a couple days.
The rule that we send out and that we live by is that the LIMS agenda has to be, and the clerk's office checks with us. Millicent will get an email very quickly if the agenda is not on LIMS at noon 2 business days before.
2 business days.
And so then we also hold ourselves to the standard of that's when we send our Gov delivery out. The Gov delivery is not as like explicit in that open meeting law. It's really important that it's on LIMS 2 days in advance, and then we shouldn't be adding anything to that once that noon deadline has hit. So really what we should be holding ourselves to is that by noon 2 days before, if we haven't had something that we and we've had to cancel like 1 or 2 maybe presentations from folks, unfortunately, when they just can't get the details in, and that's a huge change from in person. I would reprint the agendas sometimes a minute before I walked over, depending on someone like having a childcare change or whatever it was. But Raina, I see you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the open meeting statute right now, and the requirement seems to be that we just make sure that we can all hear each other and hear all the discussion and testimony. So I mean, I'm a little confused about why the clerk's office has interpreted it in this way, but that's maybe a separate issue. My question is, does the clerk's office have their like guidelines written down somewhere?
We have some guides that they've sent to us that we can look into, like if those are things that like make sense to send out, like if they're like fitting for this. Some of it's just been kind of like word of mouth. So I guess offhand, I honestly can't remember if there's like a guide.
Okay. So the second presentation today was out of compliance, or I couldn't figure out where. I was hearing
no, the link
that I couldn't find.
That link was included on the LIMS agenda. From what I understand,
there was just the one link to the OpenGov. Like I was scrolling down and I didn't see things that were lining up. I was trying not to, I mean, I might have missed them because I was really trying to stay present in what was being discussed, but certainly.
I'll be honest, I wasn't paying super close attention to the details of what was being. It's my second time hearing that presentation. So I don't know if he moved off that page. We try, like if I notice someone bringing up something that we haven't had, I would try to tell them like, hey, that's not in accordance. Like the reality is, anytime we break the open meeting law, it's not like this committee is then like disband or like there's no like formal thing that's going to happen, but it's just our regular practice has to meet certain standards so that we don't just continually kind of like knowingly break things. But if you ever notice anything that you think is out of compliance and you want to speak up, like I'll back you up on that if I agree, or I'll give you my reading of whether or not I think it is or not. So
I don't want to get anyone in trouble, and my goal would be accessibility and transparency, and I just don't feel from what I'm seeing that those goals are aligned with what the information we're being given. Just in that there's not necessarily a guideline, as Raina pointed out, that we can go to and say, yes, this is what's going on, or no, this isn't. I know I've talked to people who haven't been able to get into our meetings. Like there's some definite increased accessibility barriers, as Don has pointed out, and as I've also noticed, and I don't know even where to give that information. Like when people can't get into the meeting despite using the correct phone number, or
yeah, I mean, if they're having technical issues, like come through us. I mean, we set up these meetings. Millicent sets up the recurring meetings, and we can provide that information for folks to get in. I'll just say you're right, Julia. Like there are aspects of this and just online meeting in general that do not improve accessibility for all folks in all ways.
It's going to be difficult no matter what, but I would expect, like with voting there's a specific way to give feedback on what isn't working. And then they can use it to determine, was there an error with the person trying to vote? Did they have the wrong information, or was there something in the system that was not set up correctly? And for a system as new as this, I don't feel comfortable with the idea that the only line of feedback is kind of we tell you and Matthew and Millicent, and then that goes up, and then we never hear back directly.
I mean, we can
Versus,
make it like we can do a better job of following up if you feel like we haven't. Like I'm happy to report back if you have a specific ask for us to bring to the clerk's office. I think unfortunately what's happened is like we have made those asks because we also want the same thing, and the answer's been like a simple no, and that's not what folks on this call want, and I totally understand that. Like I appreciate that. There are many ways that we could be using technology to broaden accessibility, and unfortunately some of those are stifled due to some of the process pieces that we have to follow, but there are reasons for those, and again, like
those should be transparent. That's the issue, not with you or Millicent or Matthew. It's that the clerk is not being transparent about what's going on or how these decisions are being made in a way that, as you said, they have 50 different advisory committees that they're overseeing, but there's no communication from them directly to us. It's only through an intermediary, and it's complex and changing information, and that seems not good process and not transparent.
If you have feedback on like how we could improve that, I'd be interested to hear it. I mean, a little bit of it is kind of the system that we're set up in of, again, 50 boards and commissions, and trying to make them all work in the same way and make it so that anyone who goes onto LIMS can look up any meeting and say, oh, I know this topic is going to be on this meeting, so I'm going to show up for this topic, as opposed to like we suddenly pull an agenda out of thin air and put on a resource that was never online, and it just so that, like the intent
that all makes sense.
is there, but I do understand that the process can be frustrating.
I guess for giving feedback on the process is what I'm concerned about, because I feel like that's where elections is excellent, and I'm sort of surprised to see such that lack of process coming from the city clerk who also oversees elections. Like, there's not, as far as I know, if I want to share broadly that there are these meetings and here's where they are, here's the phone number you call, and here's how you can find all of this, I don't know for sure if the information there is all there. Does it include like the TTY or whatever it is for somebody who has impaired hearing to be able to participate in the meeting? Or are all the pieces there? And if they aren't, if they have problems connecting that are, what's the means of giving feedback on bits that didn't work or could be smoother when it's a new thing?
So this is the first that I'm hearing of folks not being able to join, and we absolutely do want to make sure that people can. So Julia, if you want to maybe like send me some information about like specifically what's happening, kind of just like email a little bit of what you said with maybe some more detail, I think we can help get to the bottom of that, and try to improve that process now that I'm hearing that.
I trust you and Matthew and Millicent. Like I know that there's the shared values and the implementation and everything. It's just that I don't see the process from the city clerk. And that's the question I want to raise is like, because what if I didn't trust you? Not every staff member, I'm assuming the city does hire great people, but they can't all be as great as you three. There's got to be people who don't feel as comfortable bringing it up in that way. What is the means of saying this keeps not working? I don't know if it's me or my computer. Like, at what point does it become inaccessible if it doesn't work across platforms, whatever it is? It seems like it should be really easy to be able to get into that process. I'm going to zip my mouth now because I've talked a bunch.
Well, Chris, I appreciate filling me in on that. I feel a little more oriented to it. I'm just going to mull it over. If I have something specific, perhaps I can tell you in the executive call, and then you can think about the question or that kind of thing. But as of right now, like I say, thanks for that orientation, and yeah, good. that answered my questions.
Yeah, feel free to reach out with any
Great.
thoughts that come up later.
Thank you.
Barb, I think
You're on mute, Barb.
No, I'm not. I'm asking if there's any announcements or anything else from anyone before we adjourn a little bit early. Praise the Lord.
Open streets. Open streets on Sunday.
Oh, that's right. Cool.
I'll be there.
This one is which one's this weekend?
Minnehaha.
Minnehaha.
All right. All right.
Thank
Good.
you for that. Okay. I say we're done.
It was nice seeing everyone.
Yeah. Good.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody.